To be brave is not the same as to have no fear. Indeed, fortitude actually rules out a certain kind of fearlessness, namely the sort of fearlessness that is based upon a false appraisal and evaluation of reality. Such fearlessness is either blind and deaf to real danger, or else it is the result of a perversion of love. For fear and love depend upon each other. A person who does not love does not fear either, and he who loves falsely fears falsely. One who has lost the will to live does not fear death. But this indifference to life is far removed from genuine fortitude. It is indeed an inversion of the natural order. Fortitude recognizes, acknowledges, and maintains the natural order of things. The brave man is not deluded. He sees that the injury he suffers is an evil. He does not undervalue and falsify reality. He likes the taste of reality as it is, real. He does not love death, nor does he despise life. Fortitude presupposes in a certain sense that man is afraid of evil. Its essence lies not in knowing no fear, but in not allowing oneself to be forced into evil. That is a direct quotation from the work of the 20th century German philosopher Josef Pieper. Specifically, it is from a chapter on fortitude in his book, The Four Cardinal Virtues, in which he writes about prudence, temperance, justice, and fortitude, the four virtues or perfected abilities recognized in ancient Western philosophy as keys to living a good life. But what even is fortitude? Today we might be more familiar with the terms bravery or courage, which are good reference points to start our discussion. However, there are three key points about fortitude that we should consider to really have a clear idea of what is truly meant when we speak about fortitude. First, when it comes to fortitude, there is such a thing as too much of a good thing. We saw that in our opening quote, and Pieper explains further. The virtue of fortitude has nothing to do with a purely vital, blind, exuberant, daredevil spirit. On the other hand, it presupposes a healthy vitality, perhaps more than any other virtue. The man who recklessly and indiscriminately courts any kind of danger is not for that reason brave. All he proves is that, without preliminary examination or distinction, he considers all manner of things more valuable than the personal intactness which he risks for their sake. The nature of fortitude is not determined by risking one's person arbitrarily, but only by a sacrifice of self in accordance with reason, that is, with the true nature and value of things, not in any way whatsoever, but according to reason. Genuine fortitude presupposes a correct evaluation of things, of the things that one risks as well as of those which one hopes to preserve or gain by the risk. In other words, in order to be truly brave and courageous, we need to be rational, rather than reckless, ignorant, or proud. At the same time, we need to admit that fear is actually a part of a healthy interior life, because it is a bare fact that we are truly vulnerable to evil and misfortune. However, obviously we shouldn't feel so much fear that we are unable to do the right thing. This observation reveals our first key point. Fortitude is a mean, that is to say, the sweet spot between excess or deficiency. Put another way, it would be great if we never had to feel afraid, but given the world we live in, it is appropriate in certain circumstances, and it's important that our fear is rational. The classic example is a soldier in battle. On one hand, it would be bad if a soldier was so afraid to fight that he ran away from battle. On the other hand, it would also be bad if the soldier lacked any fear and simply rushed into battle alone and got killed right away. Fortitude is opposed to both cowardice and rashness. Indeed, Pieper quotes Pericles, a general from ancient Athens, to this effect. Pericles, in the lofty words of his speech for the fallen heroes, expressed wisdom also. For this too is our way, to dare most liberally where we have reflected best. With others, only ignorance begets fortitude, and reflection but begets hesitation. Okay, so fortitude is the mean governing our fear between deficiency and excess, between rashness and cowardice. Is that all there is to it? Well, yes and no. Beyond that fundamental fact, we have to ask the further question of what is the point of fortitude. After all, why do we want to have this virtue in the first place? This leads us into our second key point we need to keep in mind. Fortitude is about preserving and persevering, not just for any reason, but for the sake of the good, for something worthwhile. Indeed, Pieper provides an array of quotes from Thomas Aquinas driving this point home. If the specific character of fortitude consists in suffering injuries in the battle for the realization of the good, then the brave man must first know what the good is, and he must be brave for the sake of the good. It is for the sake of the good that the brave man exposes himself to the danger of death. In overcoming danger, fortitude seeks not danger itself, but the realization of rational good. To take death upon oneself is not in itself praiseworthy, but solely because of its subordination to good. It is not the injury that matters primarily, but the realization of the good. In other words, it's not enough that we're willing to face something that we're afraid of. We actually have to have a good purpose to make it worthwhile. For thinkers like Pieper, the courage it takes to rob a bank is no true courage at all, but just a poor imitation. As Pieper explains in his own words, the suffering of injury is only a partial and foreground aspect of fortitude. The brave man suffers injury not for its own sake, but rather as a means to preserve or to acquire a deeper, more essential intactness. Of course, this immediately erases the ultimate question, what is worth pursuing? The answer, in short, is justice, which is when we give people what they deserve, and temperance, which is when we give ourselves what we deserve. In fact, those are two other cardinal virtues, and we'll cover both of them in detail in future videos. But for now, this raises our third and final key point about fortitude, and it is something that has been hinted at throughout the video already. Fortitude is the perfection of our rationality. As Pieper explains, the actual good of man is his self-realization in accordance with reason, that is, in accordance with the truth of real things. Let us keep in mind that for the classical theology of the Church, reason always and only means the passage to reality. We must avoid the temptation of transferring our justifiably contemptuous lack of confidence in the dictatorial reason of the idealist philosophers of the 19th century to the ratio of scholasticism, always closely related to reality. The essence of this good of reason is conferred in the directive cognition of prudence. In the virtue of justice, this good of reason becomes transformed into actual existence. It is the function of justice to carry out the order of reason in all human affairs. The other virtues, fortitude and temperance, serve the conservation of this good. It is their function to preserve man from declining from the good. Among these latter two virtues, fortitude takes precedence. As we can see from the quote, not only is fortitude a perfection of our ability to reason, but it is just one part of the puzzle. Indeed, all of the cardinal virtues are linked together. They support each other, and they are only fully realized when they all work together in simultaneous harmony. As mentioned, fortitude works for the sake of justice and temperance, but in addition, fortitude also closely works together with prudence. I've discussed prudence in detail in some videos I'll link below, but in case you haven't seen those yet, prudence is the perfection of making good decisions. Of course, that's not very useful in the real world unless you're willing to stick with your decisions even if they have tough consequences. This is where fortitude comes in, as sort of a protective armor for your ability to rationally plot your course through life. It's kind of like the defense department of your moral life. Interestingly, this is why Pieper argues that fortitude is not quite as important as prudence, saying it receives its proper significance only in relation to something other than itself. Indeed, we don't always need fortitude because we're not always faced with the difficulty once we've made a good decision. In any case, just between prudence and fortitude, we can already see a good portion of the moral life. Indeed, Pieper, among others, calls prudence the mother of the cardinal virtues because decision-making is so critical in shaping all our actions. However, if prudence is the mother, then perhaps we can consider fortitude as a father and guardian. I guess that would make temperance and justice the children. Just some food for thought that we can hopefully flesh out further in the future. Thank you to everyone who watched to the end of the video. In it, we saw that fortitude is the mean or balance between too much and not enough bravery. We also saw that it is the perfection of our rationality, and that ultimately it supports and is supported by the other cardinal virtues, prudence, justice, and temperance. I'll put a link to Pieper's book below in case you are interested in exploring this further. Until next time, friends.